atrazine, chlorpyrifos, which just got taken off the list from being banned, glyphosate, dicamba 2,4-D, which is half of Agent Orange. These are chemicals that are being sprayed in our food every day by the millions of pounds, and we are ingesting them. That's a fact. There's going to be repercussions. We have to start reducing the toxic burden on ourselves and on our families. It's just absolutely imperative.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 77, and my guest is Zen Honeycutt. Zen is a speaker, writer, and the founder of Moms Across America, a national coalition of unstoppable moms. She created it to raise awareness of GMOs and related pesticides and toxins that assail our world, and the most vulnerable among us, our children. Zen is super passionate and very well informed on this topic. You are going to learn about the most common toxins that we are exposed to, what they do to us, and how to protect ourselves against them. She will inspire you with stories of her own family's fight for health and with her call to action for a better future for all of us. Before we get into the conversation, we want to remind you that we have a special offer for podcast listeners. Check out the podcast special on the podcast page of the westonaprice.org website. It's a half-off deal for 3 of our favorite resources. Only $7 for these amazing booklets. It's a great way to get acquainted with the Wise Traditions diet. And we want to acknowledge our sponsors. Wise Traditions is supported in part by Just Thrive Probiotic and Antioxidant. It's the probiotic everyone's talking about. Go to thriveprobiotic.com. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Zen.
Thank you so much, Hilda, and thank you to all your listeners.
I want you to tell our listeners the story you were telling me before we got on air about how your son's health was compromised and led you down this path of concern about the toxic burden that we're putting on our children. Can you tell them that story?
Yes, and first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I always appreciate an opportunity to connect with other mothers, parents, and citizens around the world, actually, about what's happening with our food supply. It's really an urgent issue, and I really appreciate the time that you're taking to put into this. So my children, I have 3 boys. They're 14, 12, and 8 now. And several years ago, I was sitting with my son at Thanksgiving at our grandmother's house, lots of people there. He was about 5 years old. And all of a sudden, he looked very, very sick. And I thought, oh my goodness, not now, not in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. And so I sent him to the back room to lay down, hoping that it would just go away.
Yeah.
And it didn't. In a few minutes, he was really crying out to us. And my husband and I ran back to him, and his body had swelled up like a raspberry.
Huh.
He had red bumps all over his body, his face, his neck, his chest, everywhere. And we were horrified, and we realized that somebody had put pecans in the stuffing. And we just didn't even occur to us to check, So thank goodness I had an EpiPen, because we had suspected a nut allergy before from a very mild rash. But, nut allergies get worse as they go along. So we did have to administer the EpiPen, but when we were in the car on the way to the hospital, his eyes were rolling back in his head, and we really thought we were going to lose him. It was horrifying.
Oh my goodness.
And when we were at the hospital, he was all hooked up to tubes. He was looking at me with this desperate look in his eyes, like, "Mommy, please do something." And I felt so helpless because there was literally nothing I could do but pray.
Right.
Thank God we did not lose him. But the problem beyond that was that I continued to feel like there was nothing that I could do. For years, all we did was just avoid the food. And that's, if you think about it, a lot of parents just think, okay, we just have to avoid nuts. We have to do the best we can, or, whatever food allergies they have. And they're resigned. I was resigned that anything could ever be any different. So when my son was about 8.5 or 9, he said, after a series of rashes that he developed around his mouth, we discovered not only did he have a nut allergy, He had a wheat allergy, and then he had this new allergy that we didn't know what was going on. For months, his lips would swell up. He would get a red line around his mouth. It kind of looked like he had sucked on a vacuum cleaner, and it was very painful and embarrassing looking. And he said, Mom, I really wish all my allergies would go away. And I thought, that's never going to happen. We're just going to have to live with it. But what I said was, me too, buddy. And then I realized, you know what? I'm being very resigned and doubtful about this. What if there is a way that he could get better? I had heard of a friend who didn't eat wheat for a year. And then after a year, she was able to consume a little bit of wheat now and then and not have big rashy reaction. So I said to him, Ben, what if you could get better? Like, would you like to be able to maybe a year from now be able to eat a slice of pizza or have a little bit of birthday cake at somebody's party? And he was like, yes. And I said, well, would you be my partner in your health? Like, would you drink green drinks and go to alternative doctors with me? Would you do whatever it takes to make that happen? And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, buddy, then I promise you will get better.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was a big deal for me because I didn't know how. I remember literally feeling like my body was on fire. Like, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. But I made that promise because I knew that I would take different actions by putting my word on the line. And I knew that my son would really be in partnership with me because he would trust me. And so we did take different actions. We learned all about GMOs. We learned about glyphosate. He watched movies with me. We went to alternative doctors. We found out that allergic reaction he was having was from carrageenan. That's a seaweed food thickener, and it took an iridologist, an alternative naturopathic herbal doctor, to tell us this. And that was, in fact, what it was. And this allergen can be very worrisome for some people that have an allergen to this because they can develop stomach cancer from it. Yeah, there are 12-year-old kids that have stomach cancer from this allergen. So I was like, oh, hell no, not in my watch, right? So we learned all about food, and that's when I learned about GMOs, and we went GMO free. And within 4 months, his allergen was dramatically reduced. He only had a very faint reaction to it that only lasted 2 days instead of 2 weeks. And a year or two later, after going more organic, I'm not exactly sure the timeline, but after going organic for a certain period of time, his allergens dropped for walnuts from a 19 down to a 0.2.
That is crazy. So let me just ask you, I can just picture some of our listeners thinking, wow, my kids have allergies, but I guess I had resigned myself too. And I just thought, well, we'll just have to always avoid shellfish or peanuts or whatever it is. And you're actually saying there is a chance that people can turn things around?
Absolutely. I am absolutely saying that. Now, I'm not saying go out and eat that allergen, right? You have to be careful. But if you heal your gut, if you restore the integrity of your gut, your child can eventually tolerate it. And I mean, they may be able to tolerate it. So what we realized is that by getting the toxins out of his body, by stopping exposing him to toxins, his gut was able to restore itself. And, we put in green drinks. The doctor at the time recommended MSM by MRM. That's a product that coats the lining of the stomach so that it's able to restore itself. There are new things which I would recommend much more highly now that have been developed in the past 3 or 4 years, like Restore, which we actually have on our website because we've had so many amazing testimonials about it. We finally gave in and decided to sell it on our website as a fundraiser. And of course, I'm not talking about this in order to sell it because that's just not what we do. We offer it as a solution. And what it does is it helps the integrity of the gut lining to remain intact because glyphosate, which is the number one herbicide in the world, is sprayed on our food, does not wash off. And we ingest that. My son was eating that for 9 years. I fed him GMOs sprayed with glyphosate. I fed him non-organic food. And glyphosate is a chemical that's been shown in the testing to break apart the integrity of the gut lining. And when that happens, little holes form in the gut lining and the food can escape. And then the body acknowledges that food like a foreign invader because it's not digested, right? And it's leaking through the gut. And so then you develop inflammation and the gut lining is, impacted. So then the gut bacteria that are normally in there can't do their thing. There's all kinds of great hormones. They remove mercury. They create serotonin and melatonin for you. They balance all kinds of things in your body besides breaking down food, right? There's good bacteria that are the source of your immune system. So if you've got little holes in your stomach from glyphosate, you've got a lot of problems. And Restore goes in there. It's from the earth. It's lignite. It's from shale, from 50 million-year-old soil. And it zippers back up the gut lining. And then when you reintroduce glyphosate on it, nothing happens. So it can actually prevent, or I should say, support your gut to do what it's supposed to do because the integrity of the gut lining is restored.
Zen, this sounds amazing. And I'm tracking with you. I've heard a lot of guests on my show actually talk about the dangers of GMOs and the glyphosate, which is this weed killer that also, negatively impacts our health. But what do you say to the person who's skeptical and who's like, you know what? I've been eating, bread sprayed with glyphosate for decades and nothing ever happened to me. What would you tell them?
Well, maybe nothing is happening to you that you can see, but I think we can all agree that pesticides kill things. And when you understand that this one in particular does not wash off, I would hope that you would reconsider at least reducing your exposure to that, because you can't see inflammation in your stomach. You're only going to see it when you start getting a histamine type of, a reaction to it, and you've got a rash on the outside of your body, or eczema or psoriasis or lupus or some sort of autoimmune disease, and can see it in your children or your grandchildren. 1 out of 2 children now, as I mentioned earlier, have a chronic illness in America today: autism, allergies, autoimmune issues, asthma, diabetes, or obesity. I guarantee you that you have a family member that this is impacting. So if you're not going to do it for yourself, I would at least encourage you to have organic food available to your family or your loved ones, your friends, when they come over, because we have to start reducing the toxic burden on ourselves and on our families. It's just absolutely imperative.
And I think that toxic burden is probably obviously greater now than it was before, which is why it may be that these older people have been doing okay because glyphosate hasn't been sprayed as long on their food as it has been on our children's food. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that's why kids are more sensitive now and have more allergies and issues than older people, because the older people haven't been exposed to it as long.
Yes, and the older people didn't have their reproductive organs forming when they were eating food that was sprayed with toxins. It just wasn't that way. And their brains were not just developing. Their hearts were not forming, their livers and their kidneys. I mean, there's a serious amount of toxins that we are being exposed to, our children are being exposed to, that we as adults or our parents as children were never exposed to. And there's no doubt about that. There's no argument around that. There are all kinds of, atrazine, chlorpyrifos, which just got taken off the list from being banned, glyphosate, dicamba 2,4-D, which is half of Agent Orange. These are chemicals that are being sprayed in our food every day by the millions of pounds, and we are ingesting them. That's a fact. There's going to be repercussions. And what we see in the animal studies is endocrine disruption, which means that can halt or harm the development of a fetus. That means sex hormone changes. You have to wonder what that's doing with our children, with the chemicals found in our water and in our food. It's a carcinogen. Glyphosate's a known carcinogen now. It's recognized by the California EPA and by the IARC, which is a World Health Organization. It's a neurotoxin. So there's all kinds of health issues to be concerned about.
Absolutely. So tell us more about that. I think you said there's some proposition that is being presented. Is that in the California legislature?
Yes. So this is very important for the rest of the world, not just California. California tends to lead the way in a lot of different environmental type of issues. Prop 65, it's a law and it's a certain list in California which lists chemicals or just different things as are carcinogen if they are a carcinogen, if they've been shown to be carcinogenic. And glyphosate is now about to be placed on that list. And the issue is, once they place it on the list, they have to have a safe harbor level, like a certain amount that somebody could consume or a certain amount that's in the product that you would be exposed to. And the hearing for that determination is June 7th in Sacramento, and they'll accept comments up until the 21st, I believe. And of course, we'll give you the information to post on your website, and we'll have it on our website where you can go to comment. We really do need people to comment. And what I would ask is that you comment that 0 would be the acceptable level, in food, because it does bioaccumulate. And we know we have scientific studies that show that 0.1 parts per trillion has been shown to stimulate the growth of breast cancer cells. And 0.1 parts per billion has been shown to destroy gut bacteria. So as soon as you consume any small amount, even if it's smaller than that, it's going to start bioaccumulating in your bone marrow. and collect in your blood. And then that will then collect in breast milk and in urine and in your body. And we can't have that. There should be zero glyphosate in our food and water, air, soil, and all of that. So we do ask you all to please comment.
Now, is that May 21st?
No, June 21st. Extension of comment period to June 21st,
Okay,
5
June.
p.m. Yeah, the public hearing is on Wednesday, June 7th. So
Good.
the hearing is before the ending of all the comments.
So even if you don't live in California, you can put in your 2 cents about this.
I would think so, because you're going to travel to California. You're going to be using products here. California products are definitely shipped all across the country. We provide a huge portion of the food to the rest of the country, and glyphosate sprayed on the 250 crops in California.
Now, I've heard that glyphosate even makes it somehow to some organic foods. Is that right?
Yes, unfortunately, organic food is being contaminated, and there's a couple reasons for that. The number one reason I suspect is from fraudulent organic labeling. There has been evidence to show that food coming from Turkey has been fraudulently labeled as organic, and we import a huge amount of organic food. I don't know if you know this, but I don't have the exact figures, but there's millions and millions of bushels of soy. So the majority of the soy in the U.S. is GMO, and we export it.
Okay.
However, 80% of the soy that is used in organic food is imported. Does that make any sense at all?
No.
No. And it's the same thing with corn. The majority of the corn we grow is exported. We are feeding third world countries and other countries these grains to feed their animals. But we in America, the people that want organic food, we have to get that food imported. And the safety standards of that food is really questionable. The other reason why organic food might be getting contaminated is because glyphosate's been found in the rain. It's been found in the irrigation water. It's being found in soil and in manure. I mean, it is really not something that you can avoid as an organic farmer very easily at all. It's very, very difficult now. So we have a huge problem, and the solution is simply to have farmers stop using glyphosate-based herbicides and all toxic chemicals, and to have the EPA eventually ban it. I know that's a very tall order considering the political climate we're in now, but that doesn't mean that you can't demand it. We must demand it. It's simply the only thing to do.
And I was thinking not only politicians, but Monsanto and other groups like them have a lot of money in the game, right? So they're not going to just bow over to our demands or interests. So I'm glad that your group, Moms Across America, is really stepping up to get parents aware, number one, of this toxic overload that's happening, and number two, to do something about it.
Oh, well, thank you. It really is a pleasure. I'm very blessed every day to meet people like you all across the country. And my life feels richer and fuller, and I'm very grateful for all the wonderful people I'm meeting all around the world.
That's fantastic. Coming up, Zen tells us about a situation with the Azure Organic Farm in Oregon. Azure was being pressured to use herbicides to eliminate weeds on their farm. And Azure is one of the largest organic food providers to the nation. Pesticides would compromise the integrity of their farm. The good news is that since we recorded this episode just last week, the county's weed board has backed down from the original plan. They received 40,000 emails defending Azure. So as of right now, the organic farm can remain organic. This battle has been won, but stay tuned to learn more about what's at stake in cases like this one. We want to pause now and thank our sponsors. First of all, we want to remind you of the podcast special. Check out the Wise Traditions Starter Kit for our podcast listeners. It's the bundle of 3 of our most popular brochures and resources. The first is the Dietary Principles brochure, basically the list of the 11 principles that define the Wise Traditions diet. The second is the Healthy for Life booklet that gives recipes and a framework for how to eat the Wise Traditions way. And the shopping guide is the third resource. It's a 92-page booklet that lists brand names so you can figure out which foods are good, which are best, and which you should avoid altogether. These 3 together usually go for $14, but the podcast special means that you can get them for just $7. So go to westinaprice.org, the podcast page, and click on the star that says podcast special. Yep, it's just for you. The Weston A. Price Foundation wants you to be able to get a good start on your wellness journey. And it's only available for the month of May, so check it out. Hey, and we want to thank Just Thrive Probiotic and Antioxidant. Most probiotic pills just pass through our bodies without achieving the desired effect. Microbiologist Kiran Krishnan, whom I just interviewed a few weeks ago, recommends a spore-based probiotic like Just Thrive Probiotic. If you want to hear Kieran and the complete episode, check out number 69 entitled Improve Your Microbiome. Just Thrive is the first 100% spore-forming probiotic that arrives alive in the intestines naturally. It supports optimal gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. It's great for adults, kids, and the whole family. The probiotic everyone's talking about. Just Thrive Probiotic and Antioxidant. Visit their website at thriveprobiotic.com. But since we were talking about the farm stuff, Zen, let's go on with that. Did you say that some farmer is not allowed to grow his organic food, or is he being forced to use glyphosate? Tell us some about that story.
Yeah, so a story just broke yesterday that Azure Organic Farm in Oregon has received a notification saying that they must eradicate and completely eliminate certain weeds on their farm. My understanding is that other farmers in the area might be concerned that because an organic farm allows for some of the weeds to grow, that might somehow spread and impact, their farms. But most farmers don't completely eliminate a weed. That is extremely difficult to do. They simply manage it. And there's many different ways to manage it with, permaculture or mulch or cover cropping, different things like that. And if it's not invading their crops, why would they use toxic measures to spray? They obviously don't want to do that. They have an organic farm. So this farm is asking for people to comment by May 17th is the ideal date. The court date is May 22nd, and it's near Portland. It's about an hour and a half outside of Portland, in Dafur, I think is the name of it, Dafur. So it's Azure Farm. And this is absolutely essential because this is one of the largest organic food providers to the nation. They have Azure standard drop-off points all across the nation, and you can gather as a community and get your bulk organic food at a discount, directly from the supplier. So they offer a wonderful service to people who want to buy organic food in bulk and on a budget. And we simply must protect them. And because if this is allowed, that they're going to set precedent for this. They're going to go into other organic farms and insist that they spray and basically destroy their brand.
It seems outrageous, really.
It is. It is completely outrageous. And I believe their intent is to destroy the integrity of organic farming. They know that we are growing at anywhere to 13, 50, in some areas, 30% increase of organic purchases of produce. And the market is rapidly increasing. And they're getting nervous about that. They know that we're winning, frankly. When Cargill, one of the biggest food manufacturers on the planet, starts to actually certify some of their food non-GMO and to listen to their consumers, the GMO proponents get very nervous. They do not like this, what is happening. So they're going to try to fight back. And one of the ways to fight back is to destroy what your opponents need in order to keep going, which is organic food. If they're able to contaminate our organic food, it's not a good outcome for us. So we simply must protect it. And I would ask that everybody call and email. We have a petition out on our Facebook page as well, and make sure that your voice is heard, that we simply absolutely have to protect all organic farmers and all farmers, I would add. We don't want conventional farmers spraying toxic chemicals and giving themselves cancer or depression and birth defects in their children. We don't want any farmer spraying these toxic chemicals. We need this. We need this to stop.
You're trying to ease the toxic burden on everyone.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I see what you're saying. The companies that produce conventional food are on the run because they're losing market share. So they either need to turn things around themselves, in other words, go toward the organic non-GMO, or they need to try to stop their competitors.
Yes, that's the tactic. If you're interested in being a part of this cause, I suggest you read Sun Yat-sen's The Art of War, because the tactics that are being used are absolutely straight out of that book. And we need to be aware of what the proponents of GMOs are doing. They are out to divide and conquer us. They are out to destroy the integrity of the leaders that are leading the cause. They are out to turn around everything and use our talking points against us. They're brilliant strategists, but they're on the wrong side of history. This chemical era is going to end, and their business plan has to change. It's just not viable.
Well, and with determined people like you, I am certain it will. But I want to just put forth a question that they might say, just so that you can refute it. What about the person that says, oh my goodness, GMOs are actually an answer to a prayer, because what they do is they help us get greater crop yield so that we can feed the world and eliminate starvation. Don't you want to do that, Zen? What would you say to them?
Oh, I'd love to answer that question. And the first thing I would do is direct them to a video that we just posted today on mothers across the world and also on Moms Across America from Alice from Uganda. She is a woman that I met in Australia when I was on speaking tour there. And she's from Uganda. Her family is in Uganda. Her father died on his farm in Uganda, which was when he was growing GMO crops sprayed with glyphosate, with Roundup. And her sister and her mom have diabetes, and she herself had 9 miscarriages before she figured out that she had to avoid the toxins in her food. And now she has 3 healthy children. She had her first healthy child, I think, when she was 39 or 40, something like that. Watch the video. And she dispels every single argument that Monsanto has without even trying. She talks about specifically how once they started growing these crops that had to be sprayed with Roundup, how the soil depleted. You know, at first, for the first year or so, you may have a greater yield, right? Because you are effectively getting rid of all of the weeds, and there isn't some sort of resistance that's being built up, and the soil is still what it used to be. But after a year or two, maybe even 2 or 3 years of spraying this chemical on the soil that essentially kills off the microbes, kills off the good fungi, kills off the microbes in the soil, which is what holds in all the good bacteria and the nutrients and all that, then the soil starts to become depleted and nothing else will grow. She said, we used to grow cowpeas and legumes and all kinds of crops. Now the only thing that will grow in that soil is the GMO corn crop. So the village is essentially beginning to starve because they're running out of other biodiverse foods. And they're getting diabetes, they are dying, their soil is depleted, they're getting sick. It's depression and tumors, and I mean, it's really a nightmare.
Wow.
And so anybody who says that the greater yield is the only thing, that's the main reason why we need GMOs. You know, it's a good idea, but is it actually happening? Over a 12-year period, are you actually seeing a greater yield every single year? And what's the cost? What's happening to the farmer that's spraying those chemicals? What's happening to the soil? What's happening to the water downstream? Look at what's happening in America when 1 out of 2 males and 1 out of 3 females are expected to get cancer in America today. You have to look at the fact that we're spraying a carcinogen on our food and we're eating it every day. There has to be a connection to that. That's just simply not a risk that I would like to take. So I avoid that as much as possible by buying organic.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny. We started this conversation talking about simple peanut allergy or nut allergy that your son had. And we're ending with this powerful discussion about glyphosate and GMOs, but it's all related, isn't it, Zen?
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate that you bring that all together. Allergies, autism symptoms. My other son had autism symptoms at 8.5. There's many people with different autoimmune issues. And the issue is, you know, the chemical companies have done excellent marketing and have convinced our senators and city officials that they should be spraying this, and farmers, you know, that they should be spraying this everywhere on our streets, our sidewalks, our playgrounds, our food, you know, our feed crops for animals. And it's absolutely essential that we start to shift this thinking to organic, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, safe, healthy ways of growing food and taking care of the planet.
So Zen, as we wrap up and the summer is approaching, is there anything people can do to really kind of roll up their sleeves and get involved in this whole issue?
Oh, absolutely. I would love for everybody to consider being in a 4th of July parade. And now it sounds like it might be a scary thing, like what would I do? But really all you do is find your local parade and look to see if they need you to apply to be in the parade, which is just fill out a simple form, takes 2 minutes. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it's $15 to join in. And you just get a banner off our website, momsacrossamerica.org, click on materials. You can download our banner or just send the PDF to Staples and get it printed out for anywhere from $30 to $60. Join in the 4th of July parade wearing red, white, and blue. It's that easy. Somebody else has already organized this event. And if you think about it, one parade with 3 spectators deep on each side for 3 miles means reaching over 30 to 40,000 people. in one day. And you can hand out flyers that we have available on our website for free. All you have to do is pay for shipping and reach thousands of people locally and millions of people nationally with us on a single day. And I encourage you to think about this, whether your passion is GMOs or food or health freedom choice or aerial spraying or fracking or big oil, whatever that is. This is America. These are our towns. These are our neighbors. We can have the opportunity to reach out to them, to educate them in a family-friendly way.
Excellent. Well, I feel like you've already answered my final question that I ask my guests, but I have to pose it anyway. Zen, if the listener could only do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Yes, absolutely. Eat organic as much as possible. And right now, I would start with oatmeal and wheat, because those are the two most highly sprayed with glyphosate. They spray it with glyphosate as a drying agent. I would love for you to avoid GMOs, which are soy and corn and sugar. Those are the highest numbers. Cottonseed oil, canola oil, and dairy can also harbor a lot of toxic chemicals because of the fats. So if you can go organic milk and organic cheeses, just take one step at a time and do anything that you can to go organic. Put reverse osmosis on your water filter if you can afford that, or just get really good water filters. And also forgive yourself for what has happened in the past. There was no way we could have known. We're doing the best we can. And every day we just make a choice to protect our children and take care of ourselves.
That's a very positive note to end on. Zen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
My guest today was Zen Honeycutt, the founder of Moms Across America. To learn more about Zen, visit her website, momsacrossamerica.com. We will have links to the resources she mentioned today and also a link to the YouTube video of the woman from Uganda that she talked about. So, if you want to find all that, just go to the show notes for episode 77 on the WestonAPrice.org website. Hey, and a big thank you to Olivia Stamforth for her help with this week's show notes. And thanks also to Sarah Fernandez, who helped put the show together. Sarah works for Podcast Village, a group that helps produce and promote podcasts and train podcasters. Check them out at podcastvillage.com. Hey, and if you're still listening, we are at 91 reviews on iTunes. Help us get to 100, please. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. Our website, WestonAPrice.org, offers free resources to address your questions and support your journey to health. You'll find videos, articles, and brochures covering a broad variety of health topics. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.